Grab your rune blades and prepare to get bloody because Blood Decay in Alpha is actually pretty fun with all the new talents that we have been able to test out. Some new additions, some not working, some not implemented, some still bad. We have looked at pretty much all of them and played with them, and we will be talking about what it is to be a Blood Decay in Dragonflight Alpha, and hopefully with fixes to some of the talents. Please, for the love of God, do it. And if you like this type of content, then more to come in the next couple of months and obviously well into the Dragonflight release, consider becoming a patron and supporting our channel. The link to our Patreon page is down below. You can actually click it, check it out. There's a bunch of tiers with some rewards for each individual tier, depending exactly on what you're looking for and what level of support you want to offer us. We'll be very, very grateful for anything, of course, because it does help us make more content. Patrons definitely support pretty much everything that you see around here, all the cool quality stuff, the lights, the cameras, the action, and of course the time that it takes to put out daily videos on pretty much everything Dragonflight Alpha, and of course some live guides as well, not to mention all the streams and all of the podcasts and everything else that we do is basically supported indirectly and directly by Patreons as well. So if you like to give a little bit back, and if you like our content and you're fine with, you know, putting your hard-earned casherinos into making us be able to do more and more amazing content for you, consider checking our Patreon page, and we sincerely thank you. Thank you. Now let's actually take a look at Blood Decay in Alpha. Off the bat, Blood Decay has had some issues with the talents, and we have touched upon that in our podcast with the Breaking WoW, and of course a lot of other people most likely mentioned them as well. There have been some changes to the general DK talent tree which are good right now, but there's still some things that leave a little bit to be desired, and we can start with the general DK talent tree and then move on into the spec. Some things that you might notice that you will probably definitely want to have starts with Rune Empowerment, which is a choice node in the, let's say, Frost Decay side of the talent tree, which is all the way to the left, where you're probably always gonna take this and not its counterpart, because we did mention, you know, unbalanced talents and stuff like that, which is a theme that will reoccur in the Blood Decay talent trees, where some of them are so overpowered that they're not really a choice. You will have to take them in detriment of choosing other things. Will of the Necropolis also is on the unholy side of the talent tree, although you can actually get through it from the middle side of the tree, which you are going to pick because you know you want those AMSs, those AMZs and all of that. So you will get Will of the Necropolis, which is quintessential to surviving big hits as a Blood Decay, since that's kind of how the spec works. Also, if we go back to the Frost Decay side of the things, you have Runic Attenuation, which has always been a core Frost Decay talent that will help you maintain a high runic power generation with auto attacks, which is particularly really good because most of the Blood Decays, if not all of the Blood Decays, normal resource economy comes from spending runes to convert them into runic power, and you spend that runic power to convert it into healing with Death Strike so that you can survive those big hits, which kind of changes a little bit in Dragonflight, and I'm not a big fan of. But I digress. Again, and also with all of the rune economy that you will have, Rune Mastery lower down the Frost tree is going to probably be mandatory for the 6% strength, because it's 6% strength, and we know how main stat and strength in this case is important for tanks. Empowered Rune Weapon is something that you can definitely get once you get to level 70, which is something that we couldn't test because there were other more important options to take that we couldn't really ignore. Although Empowered Rune Weapon was probably going to be mandatory, I don't think there's any way where you will like to not take this in favor of a better option, since there's really no other better option in the talent tree outside of Empowered Rune Weapon. Of course, Slappy Hands is another capstone which you will definitely want in Mythic Plus. It depends exactly how much you will want it in Raid. We'll need to do some sims once more content is being released. And one of the talents that really nail you down into the blood side of the tree is the improved Death Strike, which is, I mean, pretty self-explanatory. It's very core part of your rotation and you don't really want to ignore it. And a new addition is Blood Draw, which a new addition in the sense that we don't have it in Shadowlands, and it's poopy. I've played with it. It's particularly bad. You will 100% need Will of the Necropolis if you're gonna play this, and even if you do play this, it's incredibly undertuned. It does not save you. Kind of feels like it should be a sort of cheat death style mechanic. However, it is severely undertuned, and considering how your blood decay works, you cannot really take into account this, since if you're dipping really low and you're playing your blood decay properly, you're probably gonna hit your death strike that will heal you for who knows how much of your HP, and might actually invalidate the value of blood draw. Not to mention, even if you don't death strike and you let blood draw do its thing, it's still underwhelming, and if you don't have Wooded Necropolis, likely is that this might not even save you. So it's weird. I like the new additions. I want to see more additions into Blood, because it has been kind of the same for the past couple of years, and ever since Legion, it's been a little bit weird, and obviously it's overpowered now in 9.2, but it's only that because of the tier set, because of a mechanic that's not part of the DK talent tree, and I will talk about that once we get into the spec talents, but I digress. There are some more options to play within the general DK talent tree. You can go a little bit more to the unholy side of the tree. You can probably get Sacrificial Pact, which I've played with, and that was really fun. It kind of acts like a oh shit button, at least at the beginning side of the progression, since the alpha template that we had for our characters kind of left me on my blood decay with 4% haste, which is abysmal, fucking abysmal. It's horrible, so you kind of need sometimes some, you know, some pick me up in big AoE scenarios in the new dungeons. And moving on into the spec talent of Blood Decay, it's okay. Overall, the distribution of the talents is not particularly bad. I would have loved to see some more build diversity, but there are a couple of weird things there that will either never be picked, either they're mandatory and they're shit, or they're probably going to be so out of the way of what's optimal that also, you know, you'll not want to pick it. One thing that I definitely wanted to see come back more in the class fantasy, but also because I fell in love with Blood Decay back in Legion, is consumption. Consumption is once again dog shit for the, what, third expansion in a row? Why can we not get this, you know, properly optimized? It is horrible. The only saving grace is that it doesn't really cost any resources to cast, but it doesn't save you. Like in high octane situations, likely is that if you cast it, you might actually die, since it deals poop damage and it heals for poop amount as well. Maybe there's an issue with scaling, because at level 60, when you look at the tooltips and how the character scales, it feels like it should do better than Deathstrike in AoE for sure. But once you get to level 70, Deathstrike completely outscales consumption way out of the water, even with shit gear that we have as a template character at level 70. Still consumption is incredibly overtuned. With that being said, Blood Tap is probably still going to be a really good pick, especially if you've built your, you know, general DK talent trees with all the runes and the runic power generation. You'll actually, if you have enough haste, you'll actually be casting a lot, which is kind of nice. It definitely feels pretty fun. Not to mention that with all the runic power generation that you're gonna have from the general talent tree, and with having runic empowerment, spending that runic power will generate more runes, and of course Blood Tap also plays into this, especially into a playstyle that you might be familiar with. And with this, we can actually talk about the Dancing Rune Weapon playstyle that you have in BFA right now. So obviously Dancing Rune Weapon is lower down the list. It's gonna be a mandatory button, mandatory talent. You're never not going to pick this as a tank. I don't know why this is a cooldown so far down, considering how important and how crucial it is for your Blood Decay to actually have it. So there's not going to be, I don't think, a single build for Blood Decay in decent content that will not take Dancing Rune Weapon. So this is essentially not a choice. It's going to be a part of your build. It's a part of your kit. Most tanks and most specs, like if you look at the general talent tree, you have Icebound Fortitude and AMS pretty early, which are also very important. The Dancing Rune Weapon probably should have been a little bit earlier in the talent tree, since you don't want to, you know, play without it. Although you do have in the early talent trees, you have stuff like Blood Boil, which you can actually skip. You don't really need to pick Blood Boil whatsoever, but I'll get to that in a second. And like I mentioned, going further down Dancing Rune Weapon, you have the Crimson Rune Weapon mechanic, which is basically your legendary that you have right now in 925, where once you press Dancing Rune Weapon, you get 5 charges of Bone Shield, and whenever your Bone Shields are consumed, the cooldown reduction on Dancing Rune Weapon is activated by this talent, which is what you have right now as well. probably why you will always pick Tombstone in a choice node a little bit above Dancing Rune Weapon, which comes at a choice with Mark of Blood. Again, another talent that has never really been picked properly. Maybe people pick it for fun, maybe they've had some quirky uses, but this has been a pretty much dead talent throughout the last couple of expansions, and it doesn't seem like this will be worth it this time around as well, since the competition with Tombstone, considering the, well, it's not Crimson Rune Weapon, but it is Insatiable Blade. This is the new name of the talent. With Insatiable Blade, you'll never ever pick Mark Blood, and if you ever pick Dancing Rune Weapon, likely is that you will want Insatiable Blade, at least in high and Mythic Plus scenarios. And if you go further down, Dancing Rune Weapon, another, again, really strong talent that you'll probably never not want to have is Heart Rend, where Heart Strike makes your next Death Strike have more damage, which is pretty crazy. And lower it is the Everlasting Bond, which you will recognize as the tier set, or at least part of the tier set that you have right now, where you have one additional copy of Dancing Rune Weapon, and when you Heart Strike and Death Strike this time around, you increase the duration of Dancing Rune Weapon by 0.33 seconds. Now, this is kind of an upgrade to the playstyle in the sense that having Death Strike added into the mechanic is a very big improvement, and this goes into why I believe that this playstyle is dog shit for Blood Decay, not because it's overpowered or anything like that, but because it doesn't play towards the Blood Decay kit. So Blood Decay, in its nakedness, in how the spec is essentially designed, is you are particularly beefy, you take a lot of damage, and you heal it up efficiently. The way you heal it up efficiently matters into how you're spending the runes to convert them into runic power, and how you use that runic power into efficient death strikes to heal the damage that you take, making you one of maybe the least healer reliant tanks in the game right now, especially with very strong cooldowns that will let you, negate magic or absorb magic, negate stuns, or reduce physical damage taken, and a lot of that stuff from the general talent tree. This is, again, the core of Blood Decay, and a good Blood Decay, or a person that's wanting to play Blood Decay for the first time, will need to learn these, because the new addition of Dancing Rune Weapon, this playstyle, does not teach you that, since with Dancing Rune Weapon up, you can just spam your Heart Strikes, and in this case, Death Strike as well, which is pretty good, and you will likely not ever die. Now, the problem with this is that on live, you just spam Heart Strike and you just overgenerate runic power and you don't care, which is not a correct mindset to have as a Blood Decay or as a tank as well. You don't want to waste resources ever, but with the addition of Death Strike, you don't have to do that anymore. Not to mention that when you do Death Strike as well, you consume runic power and you activate runic empowerment, give you more runes, giving you more Heart Strikes. Now, my issue particularly was the fact that I had very low levels of haste, so I couldn't really see how much of an uptime I could get, but even with 4 to 5% haste, I was able to keep my Dancing Weapon for the duration of an entire big pool, which is particularly what you would like to do anyway. And with this type of rotation, if the gear kind of scales the same way, which is not, it's going to be better, you will probably have Dancing Weapon every other pack when you could probably pull bigger and bigger. So that's still pretty good. Now imagine having 10 to 15% more haste, getting more casts in. It's going to be nutty, and it's going to be nutty in the sense that it's going to be so strong that no other build is going to be able to compete with it, at least in AoE. Most likely a big part in single target as well. And that kind of sucks, because there are additional talents here that are very interesting, and one of those is Unquenchable Thirst, which is not yet implemented, but even if it was implemented, it's very undertuned. Having a playstyle revolving around Vampiric Blood has always been pretty interesting and pretty cool. You're big, you have a lot of HP, you heal for a lot. That goes into, playing your Blood Decay, like I mentioned, with definitely efficient Death Strikes, which obviously doesn't really work with the Dancing Rune Weapon, because it kind of butts heads. Once Dancing Rune Weapon is up on you, you're not going to take that much damage. But I digress. Even with this new addition, it's still going to be undertuned once it actually gets in place. And on the opposite side of the talent tree, if you look, you have 3 big main cornerstone talents, which is Dancing Weapon. On the right hand side is Gorfine's Grasp, and on the left hand side is Rapid Decomposition. Firstly, Rapid Decomposition is a garbage talent. It has always been a garbage talent. Nobody that was playing the game at any high difficult level of any kind has ever picked this talent. It is very bad. Not only is it very bad, it is mandatory to take if you want to get Shattering Bone, and of course later down the row, Bone Storm. Shattering Bone is actually really good. That's a lot of damage that you will probably want to take. And obviously Bone Storm is self-explanatory in AoE if it's going to be worth taking, because you're going to be sacrificing quite a bit. And it kind of depends on how far you spread out into the talents. But rapid decomposition rather has never been a good talent, and it hasn't been buffed, yet it's such an important talent to pick that will unlock two very important other strong talents. So I hope that this will either be addressed, either be replaced or essentially buffed with proper numbers. On the other side of the tree, I mentioned that you have Gorfiend's Grasp, which obviously is one of the core utility that Blood Decay is known for, and maybe one of the best reasons to ever bring a Blood Decay to a raid. And of course it has its uses and amazing mechanics in dungeons. But if you do take it in raid, you will be pretty much straying away from Shattering Bone, and that's a little bit weird, but fine, let's say you do take it in raid also. That's very situational, right? And if you do play Blood Decay on progression fights, you will know that for the longest time you would have taken Purgatory. Purgatory is a capstone down below, which is basically the Blood Decay cheat death, which is pretty much mandatory. Now, if you do play Blood Decay in a raid and you don't need Gorfiend's Grasp, one, you're either going to take it to get to Purgatory, or you're going to get to Purgatory from Dancing Rune Weapon, but either way, you're going to have to put 2 points into Gorfiend's Grasp upgrades that you will not use. Well, you can also get them without getting Gorfiend's Grasp, which is again a weird concept to have in terms of talents. So not only do you take 2 points that you might not use, but let's say you do pick Gorfiend's Grasp, but if you don't need it, you still have 3 dead points that you need to spend to get to Purgatory, or at least 2 at the very most. Very least, very most, doesn't really matter. This is weird. We shouldn't have useless points like rapid decomposition, like the improvements to Gorfiend's Grasp to get to talents that we actually need. And this is maybe a problem with how the layout is and how they're represented. And this is essentially what I'm not a fan of. And even so, saying this going to Purgatory and stuff like that, because likely it is that in any competitive content you'll still want to go down the middle path to get the Dancing Rune Weapon talents, which are way outclassing every other option. And I'm saying outclassing, but they're not overpowered, at least not the way that they are on live, since I have played Blood Decay and I have played Bear so far in dungeons, and pulling standardly how you would expect to be pulled without the Dancing Rune Weapon talents, you are so fucking dead, man. It's so difficult to tank without those, so they're definitely not overpowered. They're essentially keeping you up, and even with those, you're not tankier than a bear, which, I mean, that kind of goes against what you know from live, even though the talents are so strong. So even if they were like the strongest, I would have expected to be at least on par with a tank that's not necessarily simple or bland, but doesn't have like complicated mechanics going into its survivability the way that Blood Decay has. So this is essentially my gripe with the talent situations. There's some interesting potential there, and they have done some pretty good things with the general talent tree. I do hope that in the spec talent tree, we also see a little bit more love and a little bit some like awareness to some of the core options like rapid decomposition, like consumption, like the fact that you can actually not talent into Blood Boil whatsoever, and that you have some weird ass talents all the way to the right hand side that I didn't even touch upon because there's so much of a waste of points there compared to anything else that you might have. But even so, it was super fun to play Blood Decay. I really hope that these can be addressed, and we'll see how the alpha progresses, because it's still early. It's still early, guys. Don't draw any conclusions just yet. The purpose of this is to bring awareness to it, and hopefully the devs will be looking at it as like, okay, maybe we should take another look at it, right? But maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I don't know what I'm talking about, but I feel weird on my Blood Decay right now. What do you guys think? Did you enjoy the talents that you've seen so far? Do you think it's gonna be good? Do you have alpha access? Do you want alpha access and stuff like that? Well, all of that can be seen on our twitch.tv/Marcelian&Flame. If you do want to get into the alpha goodness while you are there, you can essentially see us play pretty much all of the specs. And of course, once again, if you do like to support our content, check the Patreon link down below. It'll give you a bunch of things that you can look at, and we will be super grateful. Thank you for watching the video. See you next time.
I've been loving it then, I still love it now. Still, I play WoW. Still, I play WoW. Getting better every day, let me show you how. Cause still, I play WoW. Still, I play WoW. It's getting harder to stay, but at the end of the day, it's a guilty pleasure, so just log in and play. Whether it's classic or retail, I'ma do a /bow. Still, I play WoW.